It's nice to see some familiar faces as well as some unfamiliar faces out there. Just a little information about the group. The Provost formed this task group in December to look at MOOCs, and we sort of expanded it to look at online education. We're formed from faculty from East and West Campus, staff from East and West Campus, undergrad and graduate students. On stage is a subset of the committee, and in the front row are some other members of our committee who will be available to answer questions after our half-hour presentation. I am now going to turn the microphone over to our fearless leaders, Eduardo Mendieta and Wendy Tang. Before I do, turn these off.
So as Meg said, we are barely a subset of a very large group of people who have been working very intensely for the last 6 weeks. I want to thank you for being here at this town hall meeting, and this is what we're going to be doing in the next 30 minutes. We're going to be covering some background issues so you have a sense of how MOOCs relate to online education. We will lay out some key findings, I think very important discoveries that we made about the role of MOOCs within online education. Then we will look at questions of branding and quality assurance. That means we think that Stony Brook can produce very high quality MOOCs, online education content that is uniquely Stony Brook. Furthermore, we think that this online education content and MOOCs can enhance the Stony Brook brand. We look at the different ways in which they can be delivered and what kinds of structures. They can be hybrid structures of online MOOCs. So all of those issues that are very technical, and my colleagues can speak better to that. We will explore very quickly some financial issues as well as legal issues having to do with copyright issues, the relationship between Stony Brook and SUNY-wide MOOCs and New York State and other states. We will overview very quickly what are some of the benefits, challenges, and of course, risks of engaging in this project. And finally, we hope to offer a summary of our presentation. So I'd like to turn it over now to my colleague, Wendy Tang.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wendy Tang. I'm a faculty in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, and also the faculty director for the Honors College. Thank you for coming. I want to begin with sharing with you some of my personal experience in working in the task force, co-chairing with Eduardo. For me, the experience actually is very similar to the snowstorm in the weekend. It's a lot of work. And also, it's also very intense, and there are times we panic. But for the most part, it's fun, exciting, and fascinating. And what I saw in the snowstorm and in the task force are both spectacular. The reason I'm sharing this with you is because I want to emphasize the findings that we are presenting today are preliminary in nature. It's done over 6 weeks, in a hurry in certain ways, over the holiday. And therefore, I'm sure there are many issues that we haven't thought of, and there are many questions we don't have answers. And that's why we're here, presenting to you what we have today, and more importantly, to seek your inputs. With that, I will begin with what is a MOOC. MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Courses. The word massive means it supports a large number of participants. Here, we're talking about hundreds and thousands. And the word open online access means that there is no campus registration required. It's free. Anyone can take it, and anywhere, anytime. And therefore, MOOCs are considered game-changing in the sense that it transforms access to education. It promotes lifelong learning. It also changes the way we teach. Open online access, this concept actually has been pioneered by MIT a few years ago when they put all their courses online for free. And since then, the concept has been embraced by many universities, private and public alike. For example, Stanford, Harvard, Princeton have all signed on to it. And recently, our chancellor has also announced the Open SUNY initiative for the same idea. Prompted by this movement, the Provost and the Senate has therefore launched the MOOC Task Force, us, charged with basically investigate the different aspects of it. And today, in this town hall meeting, we are presenting to you our preliminary findings and seek your inputs. Our goal is to be consultative and transparent because we believe together we can go far. And here are some of the key findings. On the whole, the committee believes that MOOCs are here to stay. Sure, there are a lot of good and bad experiences, but the movement is moving forward. Furthermore, Stony Brook is well positioned to develop MOOCs. We have high quality researchers and faculty. We have the in-house expertise. We have the international links. And we are a multi-campus university. All this points to the fact that we are capable and perhaps can benefit from developing MOOCs. In fact, my colleague Paul will be elaborating on this issue on how MOOCs can be used to enhance Stony Brook as a brand. Lastly, there is also a consensus of the committee that a permanent committee or task force should be established to encourage participation, creativity, and ensure quality. With that, I'll pass it to Paul, who will elaborate on the branding issue.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Wendy. I'm Paul Bingham, Biochemistry and Cell Biology. Our branding subcommittee was specifically tasked with defining the opportunities that Stony Brook might have to move into the free MOOC space that is delivered by external providers with a strong, recognizable institutional brand. As mentioned, MOOC courses are maximally public. That is, they're accessible to everyone on the planet. And thus, our profile in this space is extremely important. As Wendy and Eduardo also mentioned, the task force as a whole believes that MOOC offerings can only be undertaken as part of a larger enterprise encompassing tuition-generating online courses delivered directly by Stony Brook. So on the one hand, as most of you are aware, Stony Brook is exceptionally strong educationally. That is, our scholarship is outstanding. Moreover, teaching at Stony Brook has maintained a consistently high level of rigor. We've not succumbed to grade inflation, for example. Finally, our campus is uniquely diverse, as most of you are aware, and our geographical reach is exceptional, from Manhattan to Southampton to Korea. On the other hand, over the last decade, several centers of excellence in the craft of online teaching have already been developed at Stony Brook. First is a world-class capability to do educational video production. This depends especially on the 12 years of effort by our professional director, producer, Deanie Zimmerman, who has intensively collaborated with a large number of diverse faculty in this space, I say again, for over a decade, accumulating a great deal of crucial expertise. Second, there are several centers of online excellence in pedagogy and content development and technology. These include the Colleges of Business and Education and the School of Professional Development, of course. Especially important is the School of Nursing and Undergraduate Biology Online, who have had 17 and 12 years respectively, specifically refining the skills necessary to reach large numbers of students effectively online. That is, specifically the skills and assets we need to enter the MOOC and online space. These include, of course, pedagogical and technological developments, but I want to specifically emphasize the development of learning management systems, or LMSs. These learning management systems, LMSs, are crucial to the autonomy Stony Brook must have if we are to offer large-scale courses in the tuition-generating online environment. One of these course management systems, learning management systems, was developed by nursing in-house. The other was developed by Undergraduate Biology Online in collaboration with a local alumni-owned business firm, Streaming Tutors. The implication of this large body of existing assets, as Wendy already mentioned, is that Stony Brook is actually, perhaps unexpectedly to some of you, positioned to enter the free MOOC space and the tuition-generating online space with world-class expertise from the get-go. Moreover, beyond our strong participation in the global and MOOC environment, this kind of effort offers a lot of other effects, important effects to Stony Brook students in live courses. For example, online content can be used to teach live courses in a hybrid or flipped format context, for example. Also, these courses, these assets can be used to help students in courses that are traditionally difficult, that have a high retake rate. Finally, these kinds of online content, of course, can be used to deliver courses to Manhattan, Southampton, and Korea, and perhaps, again, as Wendy mentioned, throughout the SUNY system as part of the Open SUNY initiative envisioned by the Chancellor. Our subcommittee concurs with several other subcommittees that the constitution of a permanent task force on online and MOOC teaching is essential. And this task force would have the goal not only of advising the President and the Provost and the Senate, but equally or more importantly, encouraging and facilitating the entry of faculty and students into the production of online content, courses, and programs. I would conclude by emphasizing that our current capacity for leadership contains the foundation for continued leadership and excellence. Specifically, online education, educational research should be part of our online program, building on existing research programs and taking advantage of the existence of a strong science education PhD program with its faculty and students. As a result of the investments made by a number of units and individuals, Stony Brook is poised to meet the imminent and vital challenge presented by the MOOC and online environment, and to do so in a way that strengthens the institution dramatically moving forward. Carrie?
Thank you, Paul. My name is Carrie Hollander. I'm from the School of Nursing. I will be sharing with you, along with my colleague Tim, some of the findings that came from the Platform Technology Infrastructure Subcommittee. Why MOOCs, why now? According to the Chinese zodiac, the year 2012 was the year of the dog. According to New York Times, 2012 was the year of the MOOC. That was last year. That puts us a little bit behind. My son doesn't have a dog, and Stony Brook doesn't have MOOCs yet. So our task really was set up to look at and answer the questions, do we have the infrastructure to deliver and envision what we would call a Stony Brook MOOC? Do we have a delivery system in place that would really support the offering of MOOCs to the world? In order to answer those questions, we felt we needed to set some ground rules. The first ground rule is that MOOCs really need to be viewed as a subset of our online learning efforts, and that any technical investments, or any investments for that matter, that we put into MOOCs, we hope would then directly benefit our online learning spaces. In addition, if it's done right, we hope then to enhance our on-site course offerings. Second ground rule, that to support MOOCs, whether we develop something in-house or we outsource by partnering and joining with one of the larger players right now, Coursera, edX, Udacity, to name a few, that we need an initial and ongoing investment to both ramp up and sustain the network infrastructure to support MOOCs. Once we set the ground rules, we realized we need to understand what it is that we're looking to offer. In order to decide what platform it needs to live on and what infrastructure needs to be in place, we really need to understand the attributes of a Stony Brook MOOC. So we started by looking to see what was going out there right now as MOOCs, and a lot of it, although there's some stuff that's wonderful, a lot of it is videotaping of lectures and presenting then that to the world as course content. And we felt a Stony Brook MOOC needs to be something much more than that it needs to be a professionally produced, high-quality multimedia production. It needs to be interactive and adaptive. It needs to allow a student to have a piece of information, content, that depending on their success in answering maybe a series of questions, or depending on their success in completing a series of exercises, then brings them to the next content module. And that if they have any misconceptions along the way, that we don't just bring them to the next content module, instead we bring them over to a side, maybe remediation module, where they can get then further knowledge that they need to move forward. It needs to be modular to present the information in small pieces of information. This is how our learners are learning, in small chunks of information, just getting what they need to know when they need to know it. It can be modular, which would allow us to look at overlapping content. There may be some core content that appears in the courses from the School of Nursing that are actually core content that appear maybe in another specialty, that we can then take advantage of it being overlapping and be able to reuse some of our curriculum. It needs to be engaging. Learners now are constantly doing gaming, so we need to be able to have game-based learning exercises that will certainly engage our learners and help them to connect with the material. We need to use assessment data for continuous course refinement. If we look at our courses and modules and our content in modules, and we say, gee, some of this information is static, these are known truths. Some of this information is dynamic, it's information that needs to be very current and ever-changing. And some of the information is overlapping. If we break it in those different modules or different thoughts, then we have the ability to really look at our course content and be very proactive with updating and keeping it current. MOOCs need to be accessible, obviously, to anyone with a handicap or disability. And they also need to be device agnostic. We need to be able to support any tablet, any iPhone, any Windows phone, any Chromebook that would come our way. In addition, we need to utilize current courses that are led by experienced faculty. We've got a lot of creative faculty that have done some amazing things, whether bringing clickers into the classroom or any number of other things that they might have done, and engage them as well and have them be some of our first players in our MOOC arena. We need to collect, maintain, and synthesize usable data that supports our accreditations, supports different levels of access not just by the faculty, but access also by administration, access from departments and staff and maybe recruitment, access by researchers, as well as we need to promote lifelong learning. When a learner comes to a Stony Brook MOOC, we want to then engage that learner, we want to keep that learner, we want to maybe suggest where else that learner might want to go for additional information, and we want to create a learner's portfolio. We want to be able to provide assistive tools to effectively teach large groups of students. And again, as Wendy had said, we're talking tens of thousands of students. And what we've learned in the online arena is that we really do need to engage different tools that will assist faculty to be able to get through the massive amounts of material that they're expected to look through and help to advise and guide a student. And we also need to be technically aligned with SUNY's MOOC initiatives. A little ambitious, okay, that's what it is. There's plenty more ideas where they come from. In addition, we need to look at the key investments. So how do we support this? We look at our key investments. We need to certainly expand bandwidth and network capability to support the anticipated load on our systems. MOOCs, if they go bad in a massive way. Unfortunately, there's a recent experience, fortunately not our own experience. February 4th, an article came out from Inside Higher Ed. And if I could just quote from the article quickly, it says, maybe it was inevitable that one of the new massive open online courses would crash. After all, MOOCs are being launched with considerable speed. But MOOC advocates and technical support might have preferred the collapse of a course other than the one that was suspended this weekend. Fundamentals of Online Education, Planning and Application. That being said, it only gets worse when the faculty has to send out 41,000 emails were sent to students to inform them that they were temporarily suspending the course and that the course, when it was reoffered, they would then notify the students. Keeping it in perspective, we know even the Super Bowl has infrastructure problems. Initially, we said may require. I think really in rethinking it, we definitely will require additional investments in multimedia and classroom technologies. We need to have state-of-the-art in our classrooms, and not just a few classrooms, but as many classrooms as we can support it in. We need to invest in instructional design, help desk support for faculty and for students, software design, programmers, software licensing, potential licensing of content that we, in a classroom, make available to our small subset of people attending that class, but we really need to understand that when we offer it to a larger audience, there may be some additional costs involved. Recommendations, we need to learn from our collaborative online experiences. Collectively, we have decades of experience in teaching learners online, and we need to use that information and bring it into the MOOC arena to make it successful. We need to recognize that maybe it's not a one-size-fits-all. Blackboard, an excellent product, but maybe not the product that's going to fit or suit all of our needs. We need to establish a MOOC as well as an online platform selection committee to identify who the stakeholders are and establish selection criteria for the MOOC and online course platforms. I'm going to pass it on now to my colleague Tim.
Thank you, Carrie. Hello, my name is Timothy Vallier, and I'm a PhD student in music composition, as well as an employee of the Consortium for Digital Arts, Culture, and Technology. Part of our assignment for the Platform and Technology Subcommittee was to investigate the potential platforms that we might adopt or partner with to develop and deploy our MOOCs. In our research, we discovered 3 different types of platform opportunities: massive open online course vendors, or MOOCs, LMSs, or learning management systems, which also offer some sort of MOOC capabilities, as well open source platforms, which are still being developed. I'll be covering some of the data we gathered on MOOCs as well as LMSs. First, for MOOCs, we decided to highlight the 3 big players in the arena: Coursera, edX, and Udacity. Coursera was founded by 2 computer science professors from Stanford. It's a for-profit venture that seeks partners that are universities to develop with them massive open online courses to be deployed on their platform. They're currently exploring several different ways to generate revenue with each partner. Some of the methods are considering selling student information to employers, tutoring, sponsorships, as well as tuition fees. For certification, it's limited and it also varies by course, but with Coursera, they've allowed it to be decided by the university itself. Next is edX. edX is a non-profit MOOC vendor, which was formed by MIT and Harvard U. They're currently limited in their official partnerships, but they're hoping to develop an open source platform which goes beyond just video lectures. But their design for a viable business model is still in progress. They do offer some sort of certification. It's a not-for-credit certificate of mastery, which, while free in 2012, they're exploring charging a modest fee for in 2013 and in the future. And then there's Udacity, which is also a private and for-profit MOOC like Coursera, which was an outgrowth from free computer science classes offered in 2011 by Stanford. Udacity, unlike Coursera, partners with individual instructors to develop courses and release them through Udacity. They're currently experimenting with bringing in revenue by selling to employers information about high-performing students who might be a good fit for open jobs. For certification, they offer a free certificate of completion, which indicates the level of achievement. As well, they're pursuing paid final exams to pair students with potential employers. Next, these are 3 big learning management systems which are offering some sort of MOOC capability. The first is Moodle, one of the biggest LMS vendors, which has such a flexible system that users are currently generating and deploying MOOCs even without any official support by Moodle. Next is Blackboard, a learning management system currently being used in some areas on this campus, which has developed its own sub-brand, the Course Sites sub-brand. With the Course Sites sub-brand, as a customer of Blackboard, you should be able to develop and deploy your own MOOC using the Blackboard system. And lastly, similar to Blackboard, is Instructure, which has also developed its own sub-brand, the Canvas platform, again specializing in being able to create your own MOOC within your LMS system. Lastly, there are a few non-established open source platforms that are so new we haven't gathered enough information on. But as Carrie recommended, we do recommend the formation of a platform selection committee to go over all of the information included in our research and to then make a decision on which platform we might want to partner with. Next, I'll pass it to Tom, who will be discussing finance and legal.
Thanks very much. I'm Tom Hemmick from the Department of Physics and Astronomy, And I'll be discussing a little bit finance and legal. Sometimes I wonder whether my colleagues selected me for this task because I would be the most likely person to transfer your questions to the experts that are sitting in the audience. But as was mentioned several times, our committee currently doesn't imagine that MOOCs are simply an environment that exists on their own, but rather they should be one corner of an overall online education system, of which most of it would be offered in a for-pay system. So our largest vision is Stony Brook Online with a very highly visible and therefore must be high quality corner being developed through the MOOCs. So starting with the longer term vision on this slide, we can imagine a variety of models by which we would generate the revenue. One would be the iTunes model, where students would pay a small fee either per course, per lecture, or per suite of such lectures. Another is a revenue sharing, in which you partner your course with a suggested textbook, and those students that buy the textbook, some of that profit would come back to the university. Or a third manner by which we could do so is to charge for the certificates of completion and also for possibly an exam. This latter format can also work very effectively in a MOOC environment and has been demonstrated where students can take a course entirely for free. However, at the end of the course, if they decide that they've learned the material well enough, they can then take a one-time proctored rigorous exam for pay and then get actual university credit for that. With regard to funding, one of the things that we're evaluating is a strategy for perhaps pursuing a SUNY online fee. This is because the current technology fee paid by students would be insufficient to be used for such a large endeavor. In the short term, however, we should make a presence in the MOOC environment because Stony Brook is a center of excellence in online education, and since the MOOC environment is so highly visible to the public, it's necessary that we establish a presence there. So we've listed several goals that we think are realistic and will allow us to establish ourselves as one of the early leaders as we go on to develop the more comprehensive online environment. And the first item is to offer several courses through Coursera. One of the reasons that we're currently leaning towards Coursera is that they seem to be the best fit for the existing brand of the university. Most of the public institutions that have gone the way of MOOCs are partnering with Coursera, and moreover, the only international offerings presently in the MOOC environment are also through Coursera. And this seems to match very nicely with the existing culture at Stony Brook University. And that would be a good place for us to get started. We also imagine a couple of other things that are not entirely without revenue. One is the possibility of creating what would be initially an in-house opportunity of a MOOC course that could be used in the arena of high retake courses. High retake costs the university in revenue because of students extending their stay at the university. It also costs students in the aspect of not finishing their education on time. So a MOOC could either be used as introductory material, or it could be used as material to assist a student who's worried that they're in the process of failing. And we would try to develop such a MOOC with the target that if it was good enough, it could eventually be sent to an outlet such as Coursera to be made available to students elsewhere. Furthermore, other activities at the university that are education, such as the orientation for bringing in new students, could be an arena in which we could have a fee revenue basis for something that wouldn't be public to the entire world, but could be presented in a MOOC-style environment. Finally, with regard to legal issues, there are numerous legal issues. These involve intellectual property, they involve copyright, and even within the university, with regard to finance, there's how the money gets divided when there is a revenue stream among the university, the colleges, the departments, and the individual faculty. In this particular venue today, we're not going to venture deeply into the legal issues. What I can tell you on behalf of the committee is that, number one, we are looking into these things very carefully. Number two, there is an existence proof because MOOCs are becoming more popular and more prominent. They not only have paved part of the way for us so that we know how this works, but also we have our own large-scale online content that takes 500 to 1,000 users currently, and this paves the way. I will refer you at the present time to the link that is on this slide, where you can learn more about the SUNY policy and frequently asked questions. But today, with the audience of faculty and students, we'd like to mostly focus on the pedagogy that's available to us as faculty and students. And so with that note, I'll pass the pointer along to Ken.
I'm Ken Dill. I'm with the Laufer Center in the Chemistry and Physics departments. And I want to sum up, just before the final summary, I want to give you an overview of the upsides and the downsides that we see. The downsides first. Big investors are likely to be in this market. They can drive a race to the bottom. That is, the aim is to do these things fast and do them cheap. This could be the McDonaldization of education, the global markets for education, starting from K through 12 up through higher education and up even beyond that to adult education is $1.5 trillion per year right now, and it's estimated to be 10 times that big if we could access the markets. So there'll be big driving forces. Second, MOOCs reduce student-to-faculty interaction. Lots of students, few faculty. These days, at the moment, course completion rates, often in some of these cases, there have been 100,000 people sign up and 2,000 or 3,000 will finish. Clearly, there's some value in developing the engagement level and the quality level of MOOCs to keep people involved in them. We have issues, there remain many issues of grading, evaluation, validation of the student, is the student who he says he is. These are all problematic issues. For example, my bot can take your bot's course, and how would you know who I am? There's no business model yet. This is one of the big challenges. At the moment, they're free, but as I say, we think there's going to be a big driving force to develop business models. Critical issue is how do we scale teaching assistants? The challenge is how do you get personal attention to all these students? The upsides are potentially a huge positive impact on pedagogy in general, globally, much broader access for students, reduced cost for students, greater flexibility, because students and teachers can pick the time and the place where they learn and where they teach. Students can control the pace of their own learning. So potentially from all of these aspects, better learning outcomes. Online can supplement other forms of education. Students now have textbooks and lectures. They can have online in addition, and that can be helpful for some students. Flipped classrooms can provide a more individualized attention. The flipped classroom idea is very simple. Instead of giving a lecture on a Wednesday and then on a Thursday you have the students follow up the lecture by doing problem sets, you sort of flip that around. So on Wednesday night, the student looks at the online lecture, goes through the online lecture, and then the next day, the classroom time is spent with a faculty member with the students to help them solve problems. And the possibility for massive student data here, which can drive education research. If you're talking about courses that have tens of thousands of students, you're getting in real time probability distribution functions that can help you enormously understand how your students are learning, whether they're learning, and what they're learning. And finally, I want to end on the point of talking about what opportunities we have here at Stony Brook, the benefits that we have as an institution. We have various institutional structures already in place that are quite unique and very strong and would fit within this venue very well. One is the Journalism School Center for Communicating Science, for example, the Alan Alda Flame Challenge Group. Second is the TLT and Stony Brook TV, as already has been mentioned. This is a very powerful production facility, very high quality, and organizational structure and studios are already in place. We have a number of unique institutions here, the Simon Center, Laufer, Cold Spring Harbor, and Brookhaven nearby, Turkana Basin, and so on, which could form the basis for MOOCs. We have a commitment from campus leadership. That was the basis for putting this committee together in the first place. Already have some innovative learning management systems, as Paul has mentioned, and online can help us potentially leverage our best value status at Stony Brook University. And now it's back to Eduardo.
Thank you, Ken. I think I forgot to say who I am, so I'll say it now. I'm Eduardo Mendieta. I'm the Chair of Philosophy Department and Professor of Philosophy. I'd like to begin my conclusion our conclusion by thanking my colleagues. This PowerPoint is the tip of an iceberg. We have worked very hard, and for every slide that you've seen, there have been 10. So I want to thank my colleagues in the audience as well on the stage for their hard work. And I like to begin by noting that MOOCs indeed are a rapidly growing movement, but they're driving the transformation of online education. We should think of them as a seismograph that is registering the ways in which technology is impacting education. Obviously, as has been noted by Kerry, they have pros and cons. They are hazard, but they also have unknown benefits, and we have to be on the lookout and explore them. We can produce them, and we can produce them at very high quality. We have incredible talent. We have the technological wherewithal, and so let's take a bet on it and see what we can produce. Most importantly, as teachers, as pedagogues, we can transform our teaching, our learning experience. We think that MOOCs can actually enhance the on-campus educational experience. They can also be valuable pedagogical tools in classrooms. They can increase our cyber footprint. This is one way in which we can have a really rich, powerful, diverse global face projected through the internet of Stony Brook. Finally, as Ken mentioned, by having all of these MOOCs and online content and devices, we can generate data that can position Stony Brook as a pioneer on educational research. What is fascinating is that we're educators, but we understand very little the efficacy of our education. And this would be a great device for us to register and take stock of whether we're being efficacious pedagogues. MOOCs are indeed free, but their benefits are priceless. And I think that we need to engage in healthy chaos and explore what we can come up with. A rising tide lifts all boats, to quote John F. Kennedy. And now I'd like to turn it over to Meg.
So we're going to open the floor to questions shortly, but one of the big questions that I had was, how can I as a faculty member get involved? So faculty members should consider developing MOOCs if you teach a large enrollment course, you have unique experience or a special prominence, you're a good teacher, or open to help. You're willing to invest effort now and in the future, and you're willing to work with a development and production team. So we're going to develop a how-to for MOOCs and online education with information on strategies for development, available resources and incentives, and guidelines for how proposals will be evaluated. So now we're going to open the floor to questions or comments from you guys. We have 4 questions that are sort of aimed at faculty, staff, and students. Feel free to answer these questions. Feel free to pose your own questions. There are 2 microphones in either corner, sort of back a bit. If you want to sort of form a line, and we'll just alternate between every other microphone. And I will also be asking our colleagues in the front row to answer questions if they think that they are able. So we're going to open the floor now. Oh, excellent.
Hi there. Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah? All right. I don't know where to begin, but I was a student here at one point, and almost a decade ago, when MIT first released OpenCourseWare, as a student, I went to some of my peers in economics, business, technology, and society, and I said, I think we should really do something like this. And it became a research-type project for an entire semester. And as a software developer, I also built a prototype system to do this. And I met a lot of roadblocks and resistance among the faculty, and it was too much of a radical idea. Nobody really wanted to do it, but a lot of people loved it. It was a really good idea, but just nobody wanted to do it. And I'm really glad you guys have, come along and decided to take up the same effort. Too bad it's a decade later, and I wish we could be a leader instead of a follower. And I wish you all the best of luck. But the biggest problem, based on my research back then, was the faculty. They were, well, not everybody, but a good portion of them were resistant because they'd have to continually develop and revise their content in their lectures and courses, and a lot of them like to keep the same static stuff and never change it. I don't know why. Maybe some of them are lazy, they don't want to do anything, but that was the biggest roadblock I meant, because a lot of professors were like, oh, I don't want to change it, I like to keep things the same. They'd always have to constantly revise tests, because now that the test is out there, for everybody to take online, they'd have to revise the test every semester. And that was extra work that they'd have to do. But that was pretty much the biggest roadblock. But Dean Stein was a big advocate of it. He liked it. I wish you all the best of luck. Hopefully you'll be able to get it live.
So I'm going to totally embarrass Karen for a moment here. Karen Pernicero actually developed our slide deck. And if, Karen, can you stand up, and we're all going to thank you for a moment here. Thank you, Karen. And to our ex-student who just summarized all those points beautifully, if you could give your email to her so that we can, stay in contact with you, that would be fantastic. So if you want to make sure you guys get in touch. So, thanks. And Eduardo has something to say.
Yes, that's an excellent point. Thank you for that comment and question. In fact, we began with 8 subcommittees, and then as we were proceeding, we created a 9th subcommittee, which is faculty involvement. And Ken has taken the lead on that. Ken, would you say some things about this question?
Well, I would say the faculty involvement, what our committee thought about was simply from your point of view, because when we started this committee, originally the point of view that we were asked to think about was Stony Brook's point of view. But we have many different stakeholders here. Stony Brook is separate from teachers, is separate from students, is separate from inside versus outside, and so forth. And I think that the faculty point of view was summarized pretty much on the last 2 slides that I think Meg just showed. Number 1 is should you consider developing a MOOC? And perhaps I should say one thing that I think maybe is worth emphasizing or re-emphasizing, and that is MOOCs are separate from online education. MOOCs are a subset of online education. Online education is a very big, very broad idea that can include flipped classrooms, can include small operations, whereas MOOCs by definition are massive. And in terms of faculty thinking about what you should do, it seemed to us that there are multiple options you should be thinking about. One is, if you're interested in MOOCs, then this slide gives our suggestions for how you should be thinking about that. On the other hand, online, at any other scale or in other venues is also a very important direction for the future. We, as a committee, were not charged with thinking specifically about that, but I think that also is a very important part of the future, and all we've done here is just tried to summarize how to think about MOOCs, and also this slide that Meg is just putting up now is our view that what's needed here is to develop a how-to manual, to develop a committee of experts at Stony Brook. So if you decide you want to do something either with MOOCs or with online in general, you will have people to come to and some expertise.
Thanks, Ken. We have a question.
Am I live?
Yeah.
Okay. Hannah Neckfasil, Faculty and Department of Geosciences. One of the things, of course, education at Stony Brook has many facets, as you are all telling us so nicely. We have a role to educate, in general, freshmen. Part of our new gen eds have to be restructured for that. But of course, most of us are most interested in how we will meet our programmatic goals. That's top, first and foremost, for our, particularly undergraduate level, for our majors. And I think one of the things that's a really hard sell for faculty in general is that although we could see how this could be useful for the large enrollment courses that, let's say in the sciences, now have been reduced down to 50% since Gen Ed, the new Gen Ed will require only 1 natural science of the students. We are hard pressed to see how this necessarily will help at the upper levels to meet our programmatic goals when so many courses, for example, our department require lab exercises, a lot of hands-on types of experiences for our students, and of course, research is a very important part of our undergraduate experiences that they, and of course, that's something that Gen Ed we're trying to do also, get students to get experiential learning. So what have you done to try to move in the direction of trying to sell that this could actually be something of importance in meeting the programmatic goals that we're currently trying to, with middle states, assess where we're going and how we are actively planning to meet those?
I want to add to this. I just want to share that in electrical engineering, about 5 years ago, we have started electrical engineering courses online. And as you can imagine, engineering courses, we emphasize the hands-on component, and we do have laboratory online. Obviously, that's not MOOCs, in the sense that we don't have tens of thousands of students. But like what I rather say, a rising tide lifts all boats. The way we felt is that with the introduction of MOOCs, with the resources available, we can improve on the online education. And in terms of hands-on component in online education, it is a movement in the future. And also a lot of research is still an open issue. There are still issues that we are still struggling with, for example, authentication, how to make sure the student who's doing the course is really, so we have investigated different aspects, testing center, Skype, webcam, all these technologies, and coupled with testing centers are the things that we are working with. But I felt that having an online program, now our program is already accredited. That means we are capable of offering the degree online completely. So I think there's a lot of future, a lot of research indeed needs to be done, but it is not, it can be done. That's how I felt.
And I think Carrie might be able to talk to the labs issue.
Yeah, School of Nursing. We've had over 17 years of online experience, and the number changes, and I know I'm being videotaped, so I'm not sure exactly the number, but I would say about 60% to 65% of our students complete their education in both undergraduate, graduate, and our DNP program online. But obviously, there's clinical components, and those clinical components are then done in their local communities or local hospitals. So we've managed to combine the two, where a lot of the didactic is done online, and then obviously the clinical then done in person for the hands-on experience, as well as we bring students back for on-site intensives to regroup with those students. So one of the ways that I could see MOOCs working with even our online program and our on-site program would be to wrap an existing course around a MOOC, and that that there's some content, what normally maybe you would give in lecture, that you've now perfected and got now there up on a MOOC where you feel comfortable with that material and you feel that it does a good job of sharing that knowledge with students, and that you direct them to that particular segment of content in place of maybe reading assignments or in addition to reading assignments. And then, as we talked about the flipped classroom, when they are physically here for an on-site intensive or on-site class, that's where then you take that knowledge and you bring it to a completely different level of discussion.
Okay, I'll just follow up with a very quick comment on that. One of the things to be very careful, of course, is that when you are talking about having them have some kind of clinical experience off-site at various centers close to their community, you have an assessment issue. How do you verify that you are offering the same quality of education on all those sites?
That's a great point, and we'll make sure that the standing committee looks at that. Karen has written that one down, I'm sure. All right, we're going to go over to the side of the room.
Hello, my name is Jay Loomis. I'm an undergrad student. I'm a music major. Any other undergrads here today?
Hey,
Hello.
the undergrads
All
are
right.
representing.
I'm getting my second degree right now in music. My previous degree was in foreign languages. I studied ancient languages and modern languages, particularly Spanish, French, a little bit of German. And after I graduated from college in 1997, I taught English in Spain for about 7 years. Then I taught in Mexico for a year, and then in China for 2 years. So actually, in every place that I taught English, I spoke to other teachers about using MOOCs or other online platforms to teach languages. Right now, I'm trying to keep my Mandarin up using a platform called Live MOOC. It's language learning. It's kind of like Facebook with a didactic purpose of learning languages. So it's been working out pretty well, but there are lots of ways to improve. But as a student, I wanted to comment on the fact that I see lots of potential for online learning for the languages. So I'm the president of a group here on campus called Education is My Addiction. So if you want some input from students, undergrad students, I'd be happy to participate.
Great, thanks so much. That was, again, Addicted to Education?
Education is my addiction.
Okay, flipped it around. Sorry about that.
It's all
right,
good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our other undergrad.
Short little stand. So my name is Joseph Cavera. I think I've worked with a couple of you before. I know Dr. Mendieta, you came and you spoke at National Society for Collegiate Scholars induction, and I'm actually taking Dr. Souza and Dr. Bingham's course. I won't be as long as the other undergrad was. I'll keep it short because I know we have a lot of questions today. I want to comment on the fact that I'm excited that this is going to be, well, hopefully happening. I've looked at the design a little bit. I've worked with Nancy Wozniak a little bit, and she's been going over that with me too, and we're very excited to see that as well. I'm not sure if you discussed this earlier on. I did get here a little bit later because I was at the ePortfolio Center, but have any of you professors, and this is directed to any other professors out in the audience, I see Dr. O'Neill's here too.
Hello.
Have you guys actually had any direct experience with this, working with staff or something? Once again, I apologize if I missed this earlier on in the meeting. Have you actually run one of these before, or worked with someone running one of these before? I mean, I know you've looked at everything else, absolutely. You've considered everything else. But have you actually run one of these? You probably have. I'm just curious.
Before Paul answers that question, he has, and actually Tom as well. But just very quickly, 3 principles have guided our work. 1, speed. We had to produce a report. We have to produce a report by February 28th, and some recommendations. 2, transparency. We want to make sure everyone understands who's part of the task force and who we represent and what kinds of interests we bring to the agenda, so that no one can say that this was sprung unexpectedly on the faculty. And 3rd, consultation. We have, Wendy and I have gone to every possible venue to alert people that we're doing this and invite people's recommendations, questions, suggestions. In fact, we have a website, and there you have an email, and so send us any comments. But Paul and Tom perhaps can answer more specifically. Paul.
Let me just say that there are a number of faculty on campus, including Professor Souza and I, but a number of others as well, who've taught quite large online courses for now a number of years, so we have a lot of experience with what it would take to teach in the MOOC environment. So we're not simply kind of looking in from the outside and imagining what this would be like. There's a lot of inside knowledge. That having been said, I don't think there's anyone in the planet who's really expert at this. That is, I think even the people who do it on a really large scale like us are still learning as we go. It's an active research project. That's one of the things that makes it really exciting, though. We see every year new opportunities to take advantage of capabilities we've never had before.
All right, thanks, Paul. The next in line, please.
Jason Mastrogiovanni, Student Orientation and Family Programs. I'm glad to hear that you were considering non-traditional academic reasons to use MOOCs as well. It's something we've definitely explored, and we've looked at some products specifically geared to orientation, but I think if that could be incorporated in the mission of getting this live and going forward, I think that's something we'd very much be interested in.
Are you volunteering?
Possibly, and I'm getting to that. But one recommendation I want to talk about. I worked at the university just shy of 6 years now, and I want to encourage you, when you're looking at product selection, to look at something that not only has a lot of flexibility in terms of the multimedia capabilities, but also the data side of it and the transferability.
Yes, huge.
Less than 6 years, I have data from surveys in 4 different programs.
Right.
So just as an example, as we're thinking over time, picking a product's always going to be challenging. You don't know who's going to be the most progressive, who's going to come out with the new hot thing, but thinking about how we're going to get that data out and be able to use it in separate places or even transfer it somewhere else. If Coursera turns out to not be the product to go with long term, how can we get that data and use it elsewhere? But I did want to say, as how timely this is in regard to my work, we're looking at orientation for SUNY Korea right now, and I think there's a lot of possibilities there. There's also a large number of online students that are starting to fall under our domain that we want to reach in different ways, non-traditional students as well. So there's a lot of possibilities here for us to develop MOOCs for non-academic reasons as well.
Great,
So,
thanks for
thank
the
you.
positivity. And I think we have one last question. Are you standing and waiting?
My name is Harsh Bhasin. I am the chair of the Department of Asian and Asian American Studies. And I have a concern which I would like to be answered. And that concern stems out of the fact, I'm relatively new to Stony Brook, but for as many years that I have been here, this university has been counting its pennies. And my concern is that I would like to know what is the tangible return on investment. Because if we have been counting pennies all this time, something like MOOCs is only going to reduce the intake rather than sort of enhance it in any way. So what is the tangible return on investment is my question. Thank you.
So our finance guru, Mary's not here. I'm looking to the front. She is? Oh, perfect.
Mary, would you mind?
Go to the mic.
The mic.
So I think I was probably the most uncomfortable person on this committee because we started, the finance person gets to find out how we're going to make money from something that's free. Okay, so I thought this was a little bit of a trick. But part of it is that you're just looking for the return on the investment for a free thing. That's not going to happen. We're talking about this as part of a larger online offering that we're looking to do. The other is that if you remember, one of the earlier slides referred to reducing costs through the MOOCs. So if you have the orientation, we actually recover that through the fee. Those were the functional ones. The ones where we reduce the costs associated with retakes, negative expense equals revenue. So those actually work. As far as charging for a MOOC, obviously we're not doing that. But there is a non-tangible, measurable effect that is associated with effective PR of this campus. So if we bring people in to take our courses and know things about Stony Brook, that's not really quantifiable, but I think it's a benefit that we need to look at. I have to say that one of the strangest things about this university is that we do the most amazing things, and internally and externally, we don't know about it. I wonder how many people here knew that we even have a presence in the Turkana Basin Institute, that Richard Leakey is on the faculty, that we're involved in the Mars rover. So I just feel like part of this is to just get it out there how wonderful Stony Brook is. And if we can actually make money on it, I will be first in line, okay? I'm still looking at that. So I hope that answers your question.
So I would encourage you guys to visit us online at stonybrook.edu/online learning. There you can find a form if you're a faculty member interested in sort of expanding your course either into the MOOC arena or online. Or you can send us an email, onlinelearning@stonybrook.edu. And I'm getting pointed at. Oh, there's one more question. Hi.
If I may, one comment and two
Yeah.
questions. I'll try to keep them short. One was that it seems to me, I'm Maurice Kernan, I'm in neurobiology and behavior. I co-teach a large genetics course and I direct a lab course. Last year when Sandy took out a week, one of the things we found useful was the echo recorded lectures for the lab course turned out surprisingly useful, and that got me thinking about maybe we should be recording all of our lectures for more student flexibility in the lab course. I found it, trying to find who to contact to go about doing that, I found it hard to find out who they were. It's maybe because of the reorganization of information technology, but I couldn't find it anywhere on the campus websites. One of the things I'm reluctant to give up, though I'm an enthusiastic user of clickers, I like the interactivity, and I'm wondering, has anybody found an equivalent to that online?
Yeah, that's a very technical question. You should speak to Joanne Souza about it. Yes, there are some asynchronous equivalents of that I think are not only equivalent, they're superior to that. But that's a whole discussion that perhaps we shouldn't do here. Yeah.
And my last question was, is any part of your remit asking under what circumstances we would accept MOOC credit from MOOCs
Absolutely.
given elsewhere?
That's a big question that we're struggling with. So to sort of reiterate your point about it's been hard to find information about all the helpful things that Stony Brook already does in the area of online. We're trying to centralize the knowledge base, and that's why we have this new URL, stonybrook.edu/online learning. We'll try to put in as many keywords in there as possible so that when you search for capturing your classroom or whatever it is, that you will get directed there. And we also sort of have a now centralized email, online_learning at stonybrook.edu. So I'd like to thank you all for coming. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. So there are refreshments somewhere, probably outside. Thanks.